Yeah, we are thrilled to have you. So thank you for joining. If you're in Europe, like Nikki is, thank you for joining over dinner or in the evening post work. Or if you're like myself in the Bay Area in the middle of the morning or anywhere else you are, thank you for joining us here. We did this really awesome collaboration together, and we're thrilled to show it with you. So basically, I'm going to kind of kick things off, and then I'll hand it off to Nikki. So just housekeeping. The session will be recorded, and everything will be sent to folks who RSVP after the event. Please don't listen to the second bullet, and instead put your questions in the Q&A and not in the chat, because we accidentally disabled it for everybody. That was not intentional. We want to hear from you, but we're just going to hear from you in the Q&A. So that's kind of how it will go. And I'll give maybe on the next screen, I'll give a little bit of context before introducing Nikki and then passing it off. So I'm Aaron. I am the co-founder and CEO of Outset. If you haven't heard of us, we are the AI moderated research platform. We were the first one way back in decades and decades ago in early 2023 at the start of AI, and we or start of large language models. And so we built the world's first AI moderator. And now we work with incredible companies, from Microsoft to Nestle to all sorts of cool enterprises. But one of the things we love to do is something we call it open research. It is where we are working with influential and interesting and talented folks like Nikki to do research with our platform and then open source it, right? So in other words, so much of research is kind of siloed in the companies that do them for obvious reason, but it's just we don't get to have the kind of experience that academic researchers do of getting to see that kind of the corpus of information. So we figured a good opportunity to both, or I guess there's threefold. Number one is to open the research and kind of get people, get them to be immersed in all sorts of research that we do, that people do. And then second is to get folks like Nikki into using AI moderated research to share her experience. And third, in this particular project, where Nikki and I started working together, and Nikki had this great idea of let's actually just learn from researchers about their kind of experience, perception, beliefs about AI and how it's changing research. So it's kind of like we're hitting a bunch of different boxes here, which is super exciting. And so I'm thrilled to welcome Nikki to this program, and we've been working together for a little bit. And I'll let her introduce herself and then get into the research that what she found.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aaron. I really appreciate it. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining. I am particularly obsessed with this webinar because we ran research, and that is the best kind of webinar is a post-research webinar. Really quickly about me, I am a user researcher, primarily qual, but I will call myself mixed methods because I run some surveys. And yeah, I have been doing that for about 12 years now. I work now as a consultant across many different organizations, as well as an advisor. And then I also help researchers with trying to become more strategic in their careers. So that is just a quick update or quick thing about me. But yeah, I'd love to dive into this because I absolutely first loved the idea of open research initiatives. I find it so important to be able to share findings, especially about something that everybody seems to want to talk a lot about and is low-key freaking out about, which is AI. So this for me felt like such a great opportunity, and I'm hugely grateful to be able to have run this study. So as Aaron mentioned, what we did is we had this idea of what do user researchers think of AI? And we figured that out through AI moderated interviews. So all the interviews were moderated by an AI interviewer, which is very, very meta. We know that, but that is the entire point, to kind of understand what user researchers think of AI in an AI-driven world, and trying to understand that a little bit more.
But before you get into all the results,
Yeah.
we did enable the chat. So we figured out it only took us 8 minutes into the webinar to figure out the how to enable the chat. But everybody's muted, but they are chatting in the chat and saying where they're from. So Anyways,
Oh,
we now have the chat, so it's open. I just wanted to let you
yay.
know.
Hello, chat.
Um, yes, everybody from San Francisco to Portland to London to Cincinnati, Michigan, Truckee, Missouri, my own home state, and many others. So people from all over are here. Yeah, and so sorry to interrupt, but I want to, let you know before you get into all the research.
Yay, amazing. Yeah, happy that that's working. Please chat in the chat. That's what it's there for. So yeah, let's dive in. The way that I want to go through this is kind of diving into what we found. I'm more than happy to also talk through as we kind of go some of what I found surprising. And then we will definitely have time for Q&A at the end. That is very important. I know that you must all have some really great questions, and we want to respect that. So let's do the quant stuff first. Let's get that quant stuff out of the way, and move on to the fun stuff, which is the qual stuff. No, I'm just kidding. For any quant researchers in here, you are amazing. I love you. You do great work that I could never do. But we started off by asking participants to rate 3 different statements. AI will improve the practice of user research, AI will undermine the quality of user research, and AI will undermine trust in user research. Pretty heavy hitting when it comes to the statements. The reason that we decided on these particular statements was to try and get an overall feel for a broader sense of what people are feeling, and then diving into the qual aspects. So if we go through these, we have this first one being, how much do you believe AI will improve the practice of user research in the next 5 years? And we have not at all as one, and we have 7. We have significantly. As you can see here, not as a spoiler, but as a bit of a spoiler, this is the most exciting one. Just to quickly answer, because Jane asked a fantastic question, there were 70 people who responded to the study. Sorry for not starting with the methodology and the recruitment. But if you have questions about that, please let us know. So we have that research will generally maybe improve the practice of AI will generally maybe improve the practice of user research in the next 5 years. And so let's see this next one. How much do you believe AI will undermine the quality of user research in the next 5 years? 4. That beautiful sweet spot that all of us researchers love, which is horribly neutral. To 5, which is significant, getting more towards significantly undermining. Oh, and then we have this one. How much do you believe AI will undermine the trust of user research in the next 5 years? Another 4. I was so thrilled to see these because this is my kryptonite. I absolutely hate 4s. Especially in 7-point surveys, because they are bang on the middle, which generally means we are mixed. As respondents, we are mixed. We don't really know. We are sat in the middle. We are sat right at the 4, which is a horrible job for a user researcher to try and interpret. And that's okay. It's okay for us to be sat in the middle and be unsure of what AI really means, right? It's okay for us to be unsure if it will undermine the trust, if it will have a negative impact, or if it will have a positive impact, right? It is okay to sit in that space where there is complete uncertainty, because nobody does have that answer. So with those in mind, it was fantastic. As much as it is not fantastic, it is fantastic to see that there is such a mixture, that there is such an uncertainty, because a lot of us are feeling that way. A lot of us are unsure how this will impact us in the future. And so with that, we kind of step into the qual space. Now, the way that these interviews were set up is that I wrote the questions that the AI moderated interviewer would ask. And that there were a set of different questions, and there are different levels at which the AI moderated interviewer can probe. So whether they don't probe as much or whether they probe a lot in terms of follow-up questions. So that's how this was kind of set up. And what I did is I went through those questions, sent that out. Again, 70 people responded to these AI moderated interviews. And then what I did is I brought together the themes. So pretty much like any other kind of qualitative quant-qual mixed methods based research study. So there were several themes that really emerged. The first one is what are people actually doing with AI? So how are people actually using it? The first one is going towards the automating the obvious, right? So what can we automate in terms of the simple stuff? So what are the tedious things like creating something like screener surveys, creating something like recruitment emails, anything that like is the more tedious or obvious stuff, how do we automate that? And I know quite a few researchers who create GPTs, for instance, as a way to kind of like automate things like research planning. So really looking at trying to automate the obvious. And I loved the quote of it's like having a junior researcher who can work at 3x speed but still needs a review before anything leaves the room. The second one was primarily getting unstuck, so a kickstart, right? It's a good jumping board. It's a good way to start asking questions. I like to think about this as the anti like blank screen syndrome. So helping us with jumping forward a little bit or thinking through things. From my particular perspective, this is usually how I use AI, is more of a thought partner and working through getting unstuck on something or bringing alternative views or highlighting the gaps in my thinking. And the other one is trying to test the boundaries of where AI works, where it fails, and how far we can push it that allows us to do other things. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail, but understanding, how we can really test the boundaries of AI that either enable us to do work that we weren't able to do before, or automate and do work so that we can do additional strategic work that we didn't have time for. Right. So those were the three primary buckets that how we were utilizing AI, and how people were, really experimenting as much as possible. And I will just do a quick shout out because Susan asked another fantastic question. Where did the sample come from? It was sourced via LinkedIn posts. So I made a post on LinkedIn asking for researchers to join the study. So we got the 70 participants from there. So the next kind of area that we saw in terms of themes is this shift over to strategy. There were some shifts that people were talking about, which I found really, really interesting, and not fundamentally like that surprising. The first one being the mindset shift, so representing a move towards a greater strategic influence. So I found this to be very interesting. So as I had mentioned, I'm a consultant, so I still work as a researcher doing research, which means inevitably I still do things like what we sometimes think of as low level research, which I don't actually believe in, but things like usability testing, right? And things that are like recruitment and research ops, those kinds of things that can sometimes be deemed as the grunt work or sometimes be deemed as things that people wish that they could automate. And I think within this kind of bucket, people were very hopeful, participants were very hopeful that we could kind of move from being people who did some of those lower level, and I say that because lower level could be a number of different things depending on the maturity of your company and where you work and the situation that you're in, to more strategic outputs, to more strategic conversations, to more strategic research initiatives as well. And I know that like that word has been thrown around so much. Strategic, strategic, strategic. How do we actually get there? And so I think that from here, something that I found interesting was the participants being very hopeful that these kinds of automations and this kind of ability to offload some of the stuff that just sucks your time out as a researcher. So something like finding video clips and clipping them and trimming them on QuickTime, which is definitely not something that I find annoying. Um, but something like that, being able to automate those kinds of things and go into more strategic conversations. Erin, did you want to add anything?
No, 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 this
Oh,
is great. Yeah.
cool. Awesome. I just saw you come off of mute, so I was like,
No, I'm just ready. I'm just ready to get in. Yeah.
ready for it. Yeah. Perfect. The next area was this balancing act. So again, researchers see their role evolving to one of strategic oversight, where the expertise is in guiding the tools, not being replaced by them. So something that I find really interesting with this finding, and what I heard a lot in, is like rather than like how do I prevent AI from taking my job, or how do I prevent AI from doing this, that, and the other thing? It's like, okay, how do I actually utilize this in order to guide my teams in the best way possible? So, how do I leverage this to be more strategic, to give my teams more access to research in better ways? How do I utilize these tools properly? And again, it's about using the tools in the best of our ability and experimenting with them and learning alongside of them. And I really loved that kind of like theme that came out, where it's really about like, okay, like it's here. We're not getting away from it. How do we utilize these tools in our craft in the best way possible and use them in a strategic way? So, for instance, like I know this is something that I do as well, is I utilize AI to help me with understanding like business context that I might not immediately understand, or team goals, and trying to help with making sure that the projects that I'm prioritizing or picking, or the projects that the team is coming to me with, or the projects that I want to pitch, are aligned with those, can really help with decision making moving forward. So really utilizing those to like guide me rather than trying to, push them away and ignore them. So definitely, and I know a lot of researchers also who are training their stakeholders on AI and how to utilize AI in better ways, which I think is so cool, because as researchers, I think we are naturally like quite good at being, very thoughtful, very intentional about how we're asking things and how we're saying things. And so I know a lot of researchers who are helping stakeholders with like getting better and improving their interactions with AI.
Yeah, I was just gonna jump in here. Like, AI kind of has like a messaging problem, like in a way, right? Like because it is so powerful that like the whole thing becomes about replacement, and like that kind of like that people have that visceral feel. But it is software to do stuff. And I think we've always taken that software to do stuff as a really good opportunity to like, yeah, like become experts. And that's great for us and our teams and great for our stakeholders. And so it's just kind of an interesting tension between, I guess, a broader society messaging around AI and the actual day-to-day use.
Yeah. Some of the outputs that I have received, and I will say actually most of the outputs that I receive from some AI, it's a little bit, I'm not scared, let's
Yeah,
say.
there you go.
And I also know what's interesting about this one as well is, and I did this because I have a little bit of cruelness in me as a seasoned researcher who's been through quite a few seasons myself. Is I had stakeholders come to me and say, "Oh, AI can solve this for us. We don't have to do this study." And I said, Okay, try it. It didn't work. So there's also like, I think a lot of researchers are taking a small step back for a second and saying, okay, try it, right? That is a very similar vibe to democratization as well. When democratization first came up, and we were like, and then it's like, all right, give it a try. And then soon, I know my stakeholders were running to me being like, that was the worst experience I've ever had. Please do my calls for me. Never let me talk to a customer again, right? Or at least without training. So I found that quite interesting in the data as well. We also have this, again, as like the support system. So how do participants envision AI enhancing the efficiency of user research? So again, coming back to this optimization, organization, this automation, helping with data analysis and insight extraction, helping with decision support. So we have a lot of these things that like can feel quite tedious and again, it's not like how does AI doesn't solve anything really. It's a support with helping us with getting things, getting to answers more efficiently or getting to our destination more efficiently. And I find this like particularly awesome in that like people are like, you know what? Like and I have done this before where I used to do it in a very manual way where I sat down and I was like I used to write out my research process and all the steps that I took in each of the stages, kind of like a journey map. And I used to be like, where is my time getting sucked out? Where is it getting drained? What are some things that I can offload, delegate, whether that be to something like Calendly and automation or something someone else. And I think that AI is going to be able to like take the place of some of those things and really help with that optimization. And it's just about us saying, what do we want to own? And what do we feel comfortable letting go of? And we will explore that question when we get to the feels. So I split this up on like, yeah, that like the doing, like what are we kind of like doing? And like what are the shifts that we're having? And now I kind of want to talk about the feelings because yeah, the feelings are real. The feelings are real, and we have to talk about them. So the first feeling that came up, I kind of want to call them vibes, but I will call them themes because I am a professional user researcher. The first theme that came up is keep the thinking in human hands. So I want AI to take over the tedious things and boring things, not the thinking things. I loved that quote so much. I was like, yes, all of these things make sense. So participants did not want AI to think for them, which I think is a fantastic utilization of AI. And this is where, as researchers, we shine when we use these kinds of platforms because we have that intention. We want to be the storytellers. We still want to connect the dots. We still know that we can do that in a way that AI cannot do that. So it's like take over those tedious tasks and give me space to think. I'm curious, when is the last time, because I know that I don't have a lot of this, when is the last time you got to sit down and think? Because that thinking time as a researcher, and I used to force myself to put thinking time. Actually, one of my previous managers made me force myself to put thinking time into my calendar, right? But everything just gets too much. Things get overwhelming. You get more and more stuff on your plate. What if some of these things can go off your plate and you actually have time to think? That's when you move to that strategic storytelling. That's when you actually have the time to connect the dots and drive the impact. And I think that with this sentiment behind this theme, it's like keep thinking part in the hands. Don't let the AI do the thinking for us. That's when things get scary. Keep the empathy alive. I loved this quote in particular. You might have data with a human in the room, but you won't have truth. I think competence review, making sure that we're not completely of that human lens and really great summarization right? Can be good at summarization depending on how it's prompted, but making sure that you're still taking that energy and putting it into like looking through the data still with that empathy, still with that deep understanding, and for all the data. Uh, you know, researchers, I used to like this, um, said, as joking, that used to be a thing that came out of my mouth. And I still got hired, but that was a long time ago. So I used to say quantitative data was dumb because it was like not empathetic, right? It was just numbers. It didn't tell us anything. It's very dramatic. But you can look at quantitative data through an empathetic lens. You can look at AI collected data through an empathetic lens, right? You can look at any kind of data through empathy, and that will start to help you connect the dots. That will start to help you, or will continue to help you to like keep the humanness alive in all of this. Because if we can do it with numbers, if we can still keep humanness alive with quantitative data, I promise you that we can keep humanness alive with AI collected data as well. We can keep it alive with any type of data, right? But it's just taking the time and putting that energy in to make sure that we're looking at it through that lens, to make sure that we are connecting those dots and to have that time to think so that we are able to. Next, the one that I thought was fantastic and hugely exciting, is keep the role growing. What will my job look like if AI is part of the team, right? What will my job look like with AI in it? And I found this one really compelling because quite a few people were excited about like where user research might go. Some people were terrified of where user research might go, right? We're sat at the fore still. We're kind of in the middle. We're not sure whether we should be excited. We're not sure whether we should be terrified. Um, and I think that for for this, it's like instead of you know, and it's hard because there's a lot of doom and gloom right now. But it's like, why don't we become the experts on AI as a part of a product team, as a part of a research team, right? How do we evolve our role to put this in here? Because like research used to be done on physical products before the digital world was there. Then the digital world was put into place and we had to evolve our role to become digital researchers, right? I know a lot of researchers still who only do physical products, which I find fascinating. And I know a lot of more researchers who only do digital products, who have never even looked at researching a physical product. Right. But these are all things that you can do, and they require different tools and different processes. And it's like, okay, with this in mind, how do we keep growing and evolving our role with AI as a part of it? Whether that's using that for automations, whether it's using it for synthesis, data analysis, whether that's using it for AI moderated interviews and bringing those into your research practice, how do we like evaluate these things and bring them into our process in a way that we find ethical, in a way that we find integrates well and still allows us to shine when it comes to strategy and leadership, right? Because I have a client that I'm working with right now that I can't say that much about, but I introduced them to an AI component, right? And I said, hey, this is a really important thing for you to be thinking about. I can help you set that up. And they were like, what? That is amazing. This is super cool. And in that short span of time, I think it was a 30-minute meeting, my contract got extended 6 months. Right. So like we can sit in something like a leadership meeting or we can talk to our colleagues about these things and be like, hey, actually, I played around with this. I feel confident in trying this out and experimenting it and kind of growing my role alongside AI and utilizing AI.
I love that. I was just gonna jump in. Like I think the opportunity for research to actually become increasingly important with the advent of AI is actually like is no small thing. Like the
Mhm.
reality is like research is this incredible place of AI adoption. It's also obviously, as we've talked about, there's mixed feelings about it. but it's the world of messy, unstructured data and a bunch of tasks that often people want to automate. And like the more leadership and ownership we take on of that, it's like we become the leaders internally to be those drivers. And like, isn't that a better position than maybe some of us have felt over the last 10 years, right? And so yeah, that's an awesome example that your contract kept getting extended. So
Yeah,
I
it's
hope
really
it's still
great.
going.
Yeah. It is. It is. And it's great. And like I feel like it's very easy because we have sat in this space of uncertainty, and uncertainty and change is never great, right? We don't even like the smallest changes. What is it like? eBay changed the background color of their website and people freaked out. The background color on eBay. People freaked out. Of course, we're going to freak out with AI. It's very natural. But I think that there's a certain empowerment in that as well of like, how can we? It's like a giant how might we exercise that I think we should all sit down and do. Is like, how might we evolve with this? How might we take this and make ourselves leaders, make ourselves experts in how we use it, and really like lead that conversation, whether that's like on a larger scale or even like a smaller scale at your own company or within your own team, right? I try and say like try and play around with it, try and experiment and have fun. Now, Sabine, I know quant people are humans too. Don't worry. You're very human. You're awesome humans. You're superhumans. I do want to talk about very briefly before we head into the Q&A, the future of what we're kind of looking at. And there was one particular quote that I was literally obsessed with. And I had to read it. So every tool can be good in the hand of the good witch, and it can be evil in the hand of the evil witch. It really depends on who is wielding that tool. That was like
That's
the
so
I
good.
it's like, who is this? Because you are a poet. But like, if you think about this as well, this is not just related to AI. We have not, this is not a new research, people trying to sideline research, people trying to push research aside, people not valuing research, people not believing in research. This isn't a new thing. We have sat down and we have defended our craft. Well, since before I was part of it. So I've been defending my craft for over 12 years, right? And so it's not actually AI that is the problem, just like it's not personas that are the problem. It's not necessarily the NPS that's the problem, although I'm not a huge fan. It's not necessarily jobs to be done. It's not necessarily democratization, because any of those things can be used well with the right intention, with the right kind of ideas, with the right thought process, with again, good intention, right? And AI is exactly the same. So if you're how do I say this? So I have sat in organizations where stakeholders hated what I did. They didn't believe in it. They didn't care. They didn't want to be a part of it. They went on customer calls and did things that didn't yield good results. They did asked not the best questions, right? So I have sat there and I have watched research burn in the wrong hands. But what I did is I didn't say, I used to say, but I don't anymore, you can't do that, or no, or, this is dumb. I didn't push back against it in the same way. I said, okay, give it a try. Let me know how it goes. Didn't go very well when suddenly nobody's using feature that we had to make, that cost us a lot of money. And now the team's pissed. And now the product manager looks bad. And now people are mad. So with this, like if you are facing people in your organization who feel like AI can take over research, you can let them try. I wrote a LinkedIn post about this saying, go for it. Try. Try to replace researchers with AI and see what happens. Right. And what usually happens is people circle back. That is a terrible phrase, but they do circle back and they say, help. And so what I think we should be ready for is to help. I think we should be ready to help our stakeholders utilizing AI in the best ways possible. I think we should find out what are the best ways possible. How do we want to use it? What do we want to do with it? How do we want to bring it into our organization? How do we want to bring it into our process? Where are the lines? Where are the boundaries? Where are the things that we are like, yes, yes to this, no to this? Let's define those. Let's clarify those. Let's bring those in. Let's have a conversation about those rather than just, trying to push to the side or trying to understand, trying to think that it doesn't exist or trying to say, no, we can't do that. What let's redefine what that looks like and actually sit down and say, it's here. How do we want to use it? So I kind of wanted to end this particular part of the webinar by saying that we get the opportunity to shape this, right? So the next chapter of research needs to be written by the teams who use it thoughtfully, protect what matters, and keep pushing for insight that's both rigorous and human. And I think that that's how we do this is having these conversations, is being okay with AI coming into our space and just being very clear, being very thoughtful, being very intentional on how we use it. And by and large, this study showed that people are extremely thoughtful, that people are extremely intentional. And I truly believe, hugely biased here, that user researchers should be the ones teaching people AI because of how we think. So, that being said, I wanted to turn it over to some questions if we have any. I can't
Well,
really see
Nikki,
anything.
why don't we actually start? I had a couple that I think
Yeah.
have come up a bit, but I also wanted to like some of my own a little bit. Just like, can you just so there were some incredible quotes in there. Some very poetic stuff. And this is should be not surprising by professional storytellers, but like it is some stuff has come through. But like, tell us a little bit about the methodology. Like, what did you? So I know you used Outset. What was that like? Right. I think people probably want to know. Did AI have an avatar, and was there some weird like kind of what was the experience? What was it setting it up? And like talk about the methodology a little bit. And you both from your lens as researcher, but also your lens kind of in here as publishing this and talking about the experience for researchers.
Yeah, so I had never done AI moderated interviews before. I'd never set them up. I'd never run them. I didn't know that much about them because I had just simply it's never crossed my desk as a possibility. And I used to be extremely skeptical with a lot of different things. So I was unfortunately went through a phase in my career where I was like, I only do this, this, and this rigor. And that was kind of coming from my academic background. But so methodology wise, setting it up, I went in, Aaron knows this, so I wrote a research plan because I can't do a study without a research plan. And within that research plan, we had goals on what we wanted to achieve in terms of what we wanted to understand. And I utilized that like I would any research plan. I utilized those goals to help me form the questions that I wanted the AI moderated interviewer to ask. And so I had a list of questions for the AI interviewer. And I put those questions in, put like a medium level of probing in. I think medium being what was it, 3 to 5 follow-up questions?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Um, and that was really hard for me. So something that was hard for me was kind of like being like, I'm gonna put this in AI hands, which are non-existent. And I found it to be difficult because for me, every question that I ask, I don't necessarily probe, but I don't know if I'm going to probe until I ask that question. So for instance, if I ask somebody, to talk me through the last time they ordered Domino's pizza, starting from like, what was the trigger point? And they give me a super clear trigger point. that I don't feel like I have to probe into, that I'm like, yeah, got it, let's move on to the next step, I won't probe. But if somebody's vague, somebody's unclear, then I will probe. And so it was really hard for me to be like, I don't know, I don't know yet if I want the AI moderated interview to probe, but I want them to because I don't want to miss anything. So it was kind of like a balancing act of me being like, yeah, this is delegation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Um, so I'm curious, like, what was most surprising for you both about the methodology and about the results? Just like, give you like the whole process, it ended, like what stuck with you as most surprising on kind of both fronts?
So one thing that stuck out for me, like when I was setting up the methodology, so as a somebody who's been doing this for a really long time, I no longer have a script, really, which is not something that I like to admit, but I am very free with my interviews. And something that I actually found very challenging was, and surprisingly challenging for me, was making sure that I wrote the best initial questions that I could. And also, something that was very surprising and tough for me was like, how do I make this interview the right length, feel okay, right? How do I build rapport with my interviewee, with my participant without being there? And so I was trying to think of things that I could do or put into the script or ask questions in a certain way that would feel like I was trying to build rapport through this AI moderated interview. I don't think I did the best job, and I will put my hands up and say that. Like, I know some people were like, I was repeating myself a lot, and I was like, I am sorry. That is my fault. I have never done this before, so I don't really know it. So I think despite my like I like to think of myself as very like fluent in generative research. Despite that fluency, I was surprised at how I was trying to translate it in the best way. So that was something that was quite tough. And I think that I thought that I like nailed it pretty well. And so it was quite surprising to me when people came back and was like, they were like, no, you didn't nail it. Like, you need to work on that. Like I had to, like, participants said that they had to repeat themselves a lot. And participants said, that, they didn't feel completely rapport. They didn't feel like they were completely alienated. But there was definitely a lot of work that I could have done, and that I would do next time to make that an even better experience. And I think, like, if we think about things like unmoderated testing, a lot of us just like throw that methodology as like, oh, we'll just do some unmoderated tests, or like we'll just run a survey. Oh, unmoderated tests suck because they are so hard to set up in a good way. They're really actually quite difficult. Same with surveys. They're really quite complex. And I think it's just like figuring out how to utilize these tools and practicing and experimenting and failing and iterating on that.
Yeah, yeah, super interesting. Um, cool. Okay, so I know there's been a number of other questions that have come up, so I'm going to jump into some. By the way, we have some that we collected beforehand from folks, so I'll jump back and forth. But I want to make sure to bring in a few others. So I think there's some questions around kind of what AI tools do you recommend or trust, and maybe that's something that if you want to speak to now, or you can kind of like send out later. But I'm curious, like maybe, so feel free to answer that, but maybe the broader question of like how to look at an AI tool that might be worth trying or trusting. Kind of what would you look for? So that's kind of a potentially two-parter, but I don't know if you want to, I don't know if you have a list of the AI tools Nikki Anderson recommends or anything, but
I don't. Um, I don't have those. But I will say, like, I am a GPT user generally. So I use ChatGPT. But I use that. That's not like research specific. It's more brainstorm specific. I enjoyed using Outset for understanding how we can incorporate this new, essentially, I'm thinking about this as a new methodology, like a new framework, a new tool. And I enjoyed using Outset in that way, of how might we, right, bring this in. But I don't have like trusted, recommended necessarily like tools for researchers who want to incorporate that AI into their work. But what I would say is sit down, either manually or with AI, and go through your research process and say, where is it that you are inefficient, annoyed, burnt out, drained, that you feel like it could there could be a potential for something to help support you. And so I would go through that. And then what I would do is I would look at tools that would help support you in those areas. The thing is there's not one AI tool to rule them all right now. And if there was, it probably would suck. So you're probably going to need to get into a few different tools and kind of use a few different tools together. But it really depends on what it is you're trying to accomplish and what tool that you're really looking for. And I would say by and large, the biggest thing to look for in terms of trust is what do they do with your data and the privacy behind that, and then sitting down with your legal team or anybody who represents a legal team at your organization and understanding what that looks like from their perspective. I would say that's like a really tried and true way of evaluating AI based tools.
I was just gonna say that there's in the chat, Nikki Clark's bringing up some really interesting questions um, about how we use AI tools to assist with synthesis when we're dealing with hallucinations. And I think this is like um, so I'll just quickly share and then feel free to add to this, Nikki, because I think this is a version of the question of what AI tools do you use and when to use them. Like my best advice that I've found useful is like when you want to start using AI, pick something narrow, right? So just throwing all of your transcripts in ChatGPT and say, tell me give me the final result is very broad, right? You're actually asking AI to do many, many different things all at once. And that's where LLMs hallucinate. They hallucinate when they're kind of being asked for a broad range of things and they don't necessarily have the data to do those things. And so they make it up. Right. But I'll give you the super narrow one that I've been using for research, from early ChatGPT is like put in, some transcripts and say, can you please fit each of these transcripts to one of these four categories? So, for example, like, is this a frequent user or like, loves the new concept, hates the new concept? It is a qualitative, transcript, but like, just put them in the buckets. AI does not hallucinate that. It just needs to fit it. Just needs to find the best fit. So in other words, like that's where you've constrained AI to a very specific task. And the more you constrain LLMs, the less it's going to hallucinate. So like this is part of how we built Outset was to be the way we do synthesis, incredibly constrained. It's like a set of constrained activities or tasks pulled together by traditional software. And like that is actually, if you think about what does agentic mean, what are agents, they're doing a set of AI calls to do very discrete things. So the danger I often find is in ChatGPT is like, it can do anything. And now you're like dumping tons of data and asking for a very complex series of things to do. So that's always like my advice with like how do you deal with hallucinations. But anyway, I'm curious, Nikki, if you've dealt with hallucinations as well.
Every day. Um,
Wait,
no,
wait, we're talking about LLM
yeah.
hallucinations, not your own. I just want to. Just kidding.
So close. So yes, all the time. I so one thing that I have said is don't ask AI to do something that you couldn't even do because it's not going to probably be able to do it like in the sense of like broader thinking. So I really like Aaron, like the constraints. So putting constraints on. You can also simply just continuously ask it not to hallucinate, but you will have to still recheck it. So I say stop hallucinating, or don't make anything up. It's really annoying. You can also use an LLM that constrains it to only the data sources that you give it. So
Yeah.
that's another great option. Tools that only allow or only answer questions based on the data, like Notebook LM, for instance, if you put something into Notebook LM, it will only take from the data that you put in. So put your transcripts in, ask it a question, it will surface that. Same with like tools like Breda. They also will only surface like that kind of information that you give it. So definitely constraining it. Like if I sat down and I was looking at 12 transcripts and I asked myself, what are the final takeaways? It would take me a second to do it. I would hope that I would actually constrain myself a little bit more and start with like the research goal at least, or one of the research goals. So yeah, definitely narrowing the scope when you're talking to a more generalized LLM is very, very important too.
Yeah, and then there's a question that Dana had about context engineering, and basically, like context engineering is a nice way of saying like basically what data are you injecting into the context for AI? So what are you giving it in strategic moments, right? Like throughout some sort of workflow or pipeline to make it better serve your needs. And like this is where a huge amount of the whole universe of AI products have emerged as basically context engineering. How do you get sources of data in the right moment, in the right question, in the right way to get an output that is really, really useful or automate a task? So in other words, like I think don't underestimate the power of what you are giving AI and what you want it to return. So that's like the whole universe of prompt engineering or context engineering is like asking a good question and giving good examples or
Yeah.
giving kind of this specific bit of data you want it to really focus on. So anyways, I was going to add that bit of color there.
Yeah. That's a really great point. I think we should sit down and really think about like for prompt engineering specifically, think very carefully about your questions and give really straightforward, crystal clear, like, double-barreled questions. You're not supposed to ask double-barreled questions, and that's two questions in one. So whenever you sit down and ask your participant, oh, how did you feel about the last experience you had? And what would you have liked to have changed? Two questions in one. Don't ever ask ChatGPT two questions at once. It's not going to be like these things. Like think about the questions that you're asking and the examples that you're giving it because it's just going to feed you what you're asking it to do directly. So if you give it good examples, it gives it a shot to do it well.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, there's another question in the chat that I thought was really cool. Um, since there's often only one UX researcher to many designers, kind of so, and we talk to folks all the time. There's often one UX researcher to a very large company sometimes. How can an AI assist in that process between roles, customer success to research to designer to PM? Like, again, like I feel free to talk about what you've seen, and then I'm also happy to add if I've seen anything as well.
So is this question like how can we as the solo user researcher connect better with customer support, with PMs, with designers?
Yeah, no, the question is like, how can AI assist in the process between roles? Customer success carrot, research carrot, designer carrot, side carrot, or whatever that is,
Oh, see it.
PM.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so in other words, it's I think I take this in whatever direction, but it's probably about the kind of connectivity between these roles and how AI can help us. And I
Yeah,
realize, by the way,
absolutely.
we only have 4 minutes left, so the time really flew here. So maybe we'll wrap on this question or maybe a last one, but go for it.
Yeah. So for instance, with customer success, I've helped utilize AI with like ticket sentiment analysis. And that has helped a lot. So a lot of that, like a lot of the ways that I use like other uh kind of it's triangulation. It makes triangulation a lot easier, or it can make triangulation a lot easier. So yeah, ticket sentiment and then looking at certain ticket topics from customer success or from customer support or if product managers have certain, let's say, features that they're looking to do, like on the roadmap, can we map those to any of the topics that have come up in customer support or customer success? And then, like, as well, when you're moving on to design or product managers, it's like, okay, how do I pitch the best projects that help the PMs make the best decisions that they're trying to make? And then how do I triangulate some of that data to know that it is a priority? authority by going back to that customer support or going back to reviews, app reviews, for instance, for more B2C based companies or customer success or sales even to kind of like taking like larger data sets and trying to like narrow them down and make them a little bit easier to digest. So I use it a lot between roles as like triangulation or helping me make sure that I am helping that team make the best decision moving forward. I hope that that was helpful.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd add is like, look, there's the job of a user researcher with all these, you're a single person. There's a lot of, moving parts, a lot of information flowing, and to understand that information and be the what is the pallbearer? No, the ring. No, what's the bear? Anyways, I don't know what the right
I'm
metaphor
the
is.
pallbearer.
Yeah, that's a bad one. I don't know why I said that. No, to be the bearer of the information, to carry the information and really own it and understand it, using AI to synthesize that to help you understand it, or using AI to help, automate things from that. There's a lot of really interesting kind of techniques, but ultimately is like position yourself as the owner, right, of that deep understanding of the user. That's
Yeah.
kind of the path. So, anyways, okay. So I know we only have a minute left. So there's a lot more questions. We will have to do this again soon. Maybe write some content about it, and kind of keep tackling. I think there's some really interesting engagement here. So I just want to like quick plug. So Nikki, I was gonna say we each have quick plug. So for me, I just wanted to say, if you're interested in trying Outset or trying AI moderated as a new methodology, as something that you can start owning and kind of bringing to your teams, like, of course, reach out to us. We're around. You can find us everywhere. But yeah, Nikki, anything you wanted to share as a last step here?
Yeah, of course. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any additional questions. We have a report coming out.
Yes.
So we have a more detailed report that will be coming out and that we'll be sharing as well with even more information on what we found during the study. Because as we all know, there's only so much that we can fit into a research presentation. And so, yeah, but thank you all so much
Yeah.
for your time today.
And as you go to LinkedIn to reach out, follow Nikki. She has some amazing content. So I'll give your LinkedIn plug for you. She writes awesome things. So but yes, go follow her. But then yeah, stay tuned for the report or the recording. Thank you everybody for joining. Have a great rest of your Tuesday night/afternoon/morning.